off with something pretty exciting. So if you're excited about this, once you see what this little tidbit is, maybe drop something in the chat, an emoji, maybe in a donut GIF, I don't know. But we have a giveaway to kick off our Donuts in Demand episode today. We are giving away 10 of these fabulous fanny packs. Look at that beautiful thing. Who wouldn't want a donut patterned fanny pack? And yeah, it has some other snacks on it too. It has like lollipops and pretzels, but donuts are definitely the main attraction, both for this show and for this fanny pack. So the way you get entered into the drawing for this prize, feel free to pop something into the chat, say hello, where you're calling in from, what's your role. Another thing to do, you'll just see that a poll opened. So answer a poll or two. We'll have 3 throughout the duration of this episode. And then you could answer, I guess, but ask a question in the Q&A tab. So over on the right is where you'll find everything you need to interact with. Like I said, drop something in the chat, answer a poll, submit a Q&A, and then as a reminder, there is that Docs tab too, where you can get some helpful extra content related to all things demand generation. So again, if you're excited about this fanny pack, let me know, because I scoured Amazon for a cool giveaway to do for this episode. In the past, we've always done kind of just a gift card for donuts and coffee. Thought it was time to give, a better gift coming into the holiday season. So I'm pumped to give this away to 10 people today. So anyways, a few other things to go through before we jump in. So speaking of giveaways, I know you're all pumped for this fanny pack I found for y'all, but there is another event coming up that is going to have possibly even better giveaways. So not to trash the fanny pack because it's cool, but we are having Frosty Fest on December 15th. Actually, this Friday, crazy that we're almost all the way halfway through December. But Frosty Fest is our mix and mingle holiday event for marketers of all industries, of all roles. Come network, have some fun, listen to some sick tunes from our DJ, and also have the opportunity to win some sick prizes. What kind of prizes? Well, we'll be giving away an Apple AirPod Max, an Apple 15 or an Apple iPhone 15 Pro, a PlayStation 5, like lots of good stuff getting handed out during that fun event. So see that little banner down the bottom? Feel free to click that. You can register to attend that on Friday. I believe it's in the afternoon, and you'll have your opportunity to win some pretty cool gifts and also network with some amazing marketers. So we hope to see you there. And the last few things before I get ready to invite my guests on stage. So you'll see this like cute little orange button at the top that says Take Survey. So we are launching a demand generation compensation report next year in early February. We're actually going to launch it at one of our Donuts in Demand events. And we are running a survey to help us craft that report. So we've actually created our event and field marketing compensation report for 2 years. We'll produce that again for its 3rd year next year. And this year we decided to open the door and do it for demand generation marketers as well. So if you have just 5 minutes, it's literally less than 5 minutes to take this survey. And also, if you would be willing to share it, we would love that. So all you need to do is just hit that button. That'll alert me that you're happy to help either take the survey and or share it with your demand generation friends. We would greatly appreciate, because the more data that we can capture, the better of a report we can produce to kind of provide you all with industry standards and an understanding of where salaries lay across, the world, really, because it is a global survey. So again, please hit that button. I'll send you more information right after this event. So who is ready to get started, to engage a little bit, win that fanny pack? We are ready to welcome our guests on stage. First off, we are going to welcome Brendan Hufford on, who is the founder of Growth Sprints. And I also can't forget to show off my donuts, because I know Brendan has donuts, but I went really basic, really classic, very nostalgic, and I actually have some Little Debbie frosted donuts today. So really basic, I know. So Brendan, maybe you have something more exciting than me.
Okay, I have a donut and a story.
Ooh, love it.
So this is my donut. It is are we going to focus on it? Nope, do it.
Oh no, it still looks delicious. It's
Anyways,
fine,
it is not just a donut. It is a I think these are called cronuts, a like croissant donut. We have this really cool spot near me called Parlor Donuts that ran the coolest marketing campaign I've ever seen. They found out our town has well, they knew because they're residents, but our town has like a Facebook group, which is like where usually everybody complains about like a pothole on Broadmoor Avenue or whatever. And, but they basically were like, when we open, we are going to flood this group with pictures. And when they opened, there were probably 200 pictures every day. Pictures, everything. I was like, how's this happening? And when you go in and you buy a donut that week of them opening, they're like, oh, are you in the like community Facebook group? And people would be like, yeah. They're like, hey, good or bad, take a picture and leave a review. Like, we'd love to hear what you think. We're in there all the time. We'd love to like get some feedback. That's the spot to do it. And so everybody just went and did it. And this place exploded their business. I thought it was one of the cool, like, and it's just so simple, like knowing where people are online and being there instead of like, running something complicated.
I mean, I love it. I think you're the first guest who has had a marketing story attached to the donut they brought. So thank you, Brendan.
Because my brain is broken. It's not a good thing.
It's okay. Most of us are. And also, John McIntyre, if that's how you say your last name, says he loves Parlor Donuts. So that's awesome. And so now we're going to invite our next guest. So our next guest is Joyce Chuang. She is the Senior Director, North America Marketing at DocuSign. So Joyce, welcome. Not sure if you also brought a sweet treat with you today, but would love to know about it. Don't know if you'll have a story too, but we'll see. Joyce, where you at? There we are.
Hello.
Hello, Joyce. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and did you bring a sweet treat with you?
I did. I have my donut here. I was prepping it right before. So I've got just a standard glazed donut. It's a classic. It's one of my favorites. I usually do donut holes, but I couldn't get donut holes today, so I just got a regular donut. But yeah, I usually pick it up from this local place nearby. It's a mom and pop store that, I frequent, try not to frequent too frequently, but yeah. And then, when I'm at home, I also have a local donut shop too. It's just a hole in the wall. So I really love supporting, small businesses. And my story is not as fun as Brendan's. I heard Brendan's, but, got the classic donut supporting. And so starting off my morning feeling like at least I've done something to support the community. But, yeah.
Oh, I love it. And, the show has definitely given me an excuse to explore like local donut shops. So I'm so happy that you took that on your shoulders today as far as who's bringing what. And so, Joyce, I'm going to start with you on our first question. We always open the show this way. It's kind of a simple yet difficult question to answer, and take it in whatever direction best suits you. But how do you define demand generation?
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel like I've been asked that so many times, and always a slightly different answer. But I would say, demand generation is, to me, a long tail game and a long-term strategy of how you're going to create awareness, education, to ultimately get prospects through and wanting to purchase the product that you're selling. But a lot of it is cultivated through, the education and making sure that, you're thinking about things from a holistic perspective and really from a journey customer's point of view in their journey. So that's sort of my simple, short, answer in terms of how I think about demand generation. When people ask me too, the difference between lead generation, demand generation, I think it's really the long tail game of thinking about the customers and putting them front and center.
So clean, so concise, so easy to understand. And I will say from my own perspective, it's taken me a long time to make that adjustment because I'm a content girl. I'm a brand queen. That's like the realm I come from historically. It's taken me a long time to remove the idea that demand generation is all about just making the sell. And so I think your description kind of really lays that out in a great way. So Brendan, what is your take? How do you define demand generation?
Yeah, I think similar to Joyce, I think about the Eugene Schwartz, like 5 stages of awareness, right? Like unaware, problem aware, solution, product aware, and then most aware. And I think the job of demand generation is to take people from unaware into problem aware into solution aware, just so they know there is a way to solve this problem I'm having. I'll give you a quick example. There's this company that I love a lot because I have a beard. It's called Beard Brand. They ran a marketing campaign around this thing they called scent confusion, which I think is really fascinating because it's definitely some hand wavy marketing of like not an actual problem. I highly recommend everybody stick to real problems. But they were basically like, you're wearing a cologne that smells one way, and your beard oil smells another way, and your hair product smells a different way, and then your deodorant smells a fourth way. And that causes scent confusion. Wouldn't it be nice if all those things just smelled the same? And I was like, yeah, that would be nice. And they were like, good thing we have all of those things. Buy them all together. They all smell the same. And I, like a total sucker for Instagram ads, I was like, I'm in. Bought it instantly. But I was like, that's also a great example of like going after people who are actually like problem unaware, right? It is a group that you can pull all the way through.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great story too, because so oftentimes I think we try to pitch the thing that seems the most easiest to have people understand, or the things we know that like they're searching for or they're questioning or asking about. But like that's a hidden gem of like, no, figure out like what problem can you think they have that they never knew they had. So love that example. Definitely don't know anything about beard oils for the most part, but maybe I should learn. I don't know. I do have some friends with beards. My husband can't grow a beard, but my friends do. So, well, great opening segment. I always love getting people's kind of definitions of demand gen. It sets us up for a great conversation. So we're actually going to pull into our first segment, which is called Sprinkles of Demand. So this segment is all about the quick hit, hot takes, pointers, tips, and tricks from both of our guests about demand generation and kind of whatever topic they want to bring it into. So Brendan, we're going to start with you. What sprinkles of demand gen wisdom are you sharing with the audience today?
I'll give you a few. This is a basic one, but I think we would all do better. We're all moving really fast and we're all producing a lot of work, right? Every single person I talk to any day is like, I'm at 100% capacity at all times. Now, granted, that's like very personal what 100% is, but like nobody has time for more. If you do have time for more, you have a way to refine your process. I think the first thing is like writing. Clear writing and clear editing is clear thinking. Like it gives you a chance to refine your thoughts. Ahead of today, we like talked about some of these topics and I like wrote stuff out, just not because like I wanted to read off a script or something, but because I just wanted to refine my thinking. The second thing is something that's said a lot and not done very often, which is talk to customers. Like set up an informal customer advisory board. When I was in-house at Active Campaign, and I've heard this from a lot of clients I work with, that like our customers already get enough emails, our customers don't want to talk to us, things like that. Like, first of all, if you're saying those things to your marketing team, like you should check yourself, because like that's the problem you need to solve, not should we talk to customers. But just find a way to get in touch with them. Go on G2, see people who have left positive reviews, reach out to them, set up your own group of customers to be like, is this cool? It seems like this. Is it this or is it that? Like just get somebody to bounce ideas off of. And I think this last one isn't easy either, but it's time, right? Like you need time for a lot of this. If you want to break away from like typical checkbox marketing where we're just doing our like weekly blog, weekly email, weekly web, like, you know, all the stuff that doesn't really resonate, but we feel like we can still throw volume at it. Like we're 2012 HubSpot. I think we need to like make that time. And that's the job of marketing leaders, is to give the team time to do this type of stuff. And then last piece is also talk to the people who talk to customers. They have different lenses than you. You're a marketer, but talk to the sales team. I call it the 3S strategy. Talk to sales, talk to success, talk to support. Find out what's coming up to them unprompted over and over. And you'll have a lot of ideas that'll influence your marketing. And also it's immediate buy-in, right? When you go to your boss and you're like, I want to pursue this thing, I want to do it. And they're like, well, why? It's no longer their opinion and your opinion. It's you on behalf of customers. And if they want to argue with customers, then what are we even doing? You know?
Oh, what a great point. And there's so much there too, in just those few moments. And I have advocated forever that if you are a marketer, you need to be BFFs with your CSM team, because they hold all the golden keys. You know, they know all the insights, all the frustrations, all the beautiful stars on top of the trees. It's holiday season. I got to put some kind of like holiday stuff in the mix today. But that's so true of, as a marketer too, a lot of the times the customer context we're able to find through marketing channels like a G2 review or things that are put on social, they're going to come through a certain filter, like there's just certain things that they're not going to share in that public kind of format and structure. So if you can become BFFs, like you said, not only with your CSMs, but your support and your sales team, like you are no longer going to be making assumptions. You're going to be working off truths, which is so powerful for demand generation and any kind of marketing. So love those. And also the kind of time and thinking about your refinement and stuff. One thing we've been talking about a lot internally at Goldcast is it's not necessarily that we need to do more. We could maybe even do less, but do the less things we do better. So there's a balance there too. I think you're pointing out that's smart. So Joyce, what sprinkles of demand do you have to share with the audience today?
Yeah, I think I would add on to, what Brendan was saying just about the customers, but also look inwards. I think so many times as demand marketers, we think about the different personas that we have to go after, the different lines of businesses, and we think we need to go and, take and receive, not take, but go and seek out this, seek out the input and feedback from external parties when just within our own organizations and businesses, we have those personas. So, a great example of how we did that here at DocuSign was we were trying to branch out and reach a new audience that we hadn't before. And this was really around the IT and developers. And, we were trying to figure out where do they live? Where's the best place to place content? What events should we go after? And then we realized, well, we have an IT team here and we also have developers here. So why don't we just go downstairs and ask them and do, a quick interview with them? And it was actually great. It spawned, a wonderful idea for content creation for us just around DocuSign on DocuSign. But I think it's little things like that where you think about it's not always seeking outwards and externally, but how you can also look within your organization and just the people that you're working with on a regular basis to get some input. And then I think the second big one is, I think demand marketers really resonate this, and we probably all feel the same pain, which is measuring our impact and trying to figure out, what is the output of what we're doing. And, so many times we think like, we need to have this dashboard, we need to have this dashboard, and we need to connect all this. And I think the reality after being in, the industry for so long is just that there's never going to be a perfect dashboard and there's never going to be a perfect report. Yeah. So, the only thing that we can do, and the thing that, I always try to remind folks, and I think is really important for myself too, is like, if we're going to do something, let's just be maniacal about how we're going to track it. And whether it's going to take, some iterations of us having to manually do it or, some of it being automated, as long as we know exactly how we're going to do that, even if it gets us from a simple point A to B and it's not perfect, then we're in a much better spot than trying to figure out like, how do we make it perfect and how do we get it from A, B, D, C, whatever. So I think those are kind of, my two sprinkles that I have to offer.
Ooh, girl, preach, 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 preach. You are singing the language of all of us marketers, I feel like, with those two things. And with the reporting piece, I think too, one trap we fall into a lot is thinking that certain metrics outweigh other metrics, when in reality, the ones that might not seem as flashy or as important are actually the true ones. Like, for instance, with live events, you might think that, hitting that massive registration number is really like your gold star on the chart. But in fact, it's actually like how many of those people can you have engaged during your event, and then what is happening with them post-event, right? And so we just get kind of lost, I think, sometimes in those dashboards and the reports and trying to get, like you said, there's no perfect report. We might think there is, but it isn't. And we'll go crazy driving that idea. And then the internal SME one is really fascinating you bring that up, because we actually had a discussion around that on the last episode of Donuts and Demand. Sarah McConnell of Qualified brought that up and talked about how often, especially if you're in an industry where like you're not marketing to marketers, you'll forget that like you have internal SMEs can fill those gaps for you. So use them. They'll be more than happy for the most part to talk to you. So great points there. Love it. We are about to jump into our next segment. So this is Glazed Over. So Glazed Over is all about the tactics that demand generation marketers are not using enough of. So Joyce, we're going to come back to you and have you start this one. So what tactics do you think demand generation marketers are not using enough of?
Yeah, so I think one of the key ones that come to mind for me are, not focusing enough on the sales conversion and also driving quality leads and also accounts. Depending on how your organization is looking at demand generation, you're either trying to get new users, new leads, or you're looking at it from an account-based marketing perspective. But I think so many times we become very focused in a specific tactic or focusing on one particular stage of it. Maybe it's trying to get awareness, trying to get, to the next stage of like informative. And we think about sales conversion, but, we don't think about the fact that like, we also need to make sure to keep a healthy funnel going and pipeline going, that we want to have, quality coming through. And it's not always about quantity. I know there's a lot of pressure around quantity sometimes, and depending on the stage of your company, volume is also very important. But I think, those are some of the things that sometimes marketers look over because they're so focused on either trying to get the bulk and the volume piece going. So I think sales conversion is a big one. And I can probably talk at length about that one too, because I know that, some of the challenges that we feel as marketers are also the collaboration that we have with sellers, right? And I think these are one of the things that if we can show true partnership and making sure that the marketing channels, programs, campaigns that we're deploying as part of our demand gen efforts are truly, driving the quality that we think the sales teams will be more successful in closing. It also helps foster a little bit more of that like goodwill and partnership between sales and marketing. And most of the time, helps sales see marketing as a true partner versus just trying to generate top of funnel and fill our MQLs. So I think that's one, and I know it's a really tough one to do. And I think when you're challenged and resource constrained and budget constrained, all kinds of things, the first thing you think about is just like, well, I just need to hit my pipe and I need to hit my targets, and that's it. So I'd say, don't forget about that piece of it and really forging good relationships with your sales teams and how to build good partnerships. And I think that all begins by focusing on the quality.
Yeah, because over time I've realized nothing will make your sales team hate you more than like all these leads, but they're all garbage, right? Like I think we've all probably been there at some point in time where you're like, oh yeah, this, brought in X amount of either leads or MQLs or SALs or however you want to define it. But then they actually aren't quite at that level of expectation or quality they need to be. So then, sales ends up just kind of spinning their wheels and saying like, what is going on? And you're right, that like can really degrade your relationship over time. So again, that quality over quantity theme, I think that's coming up today. I think that seems to be something that maybe all of us will be leaning more into in 2024. And again, it's like that whole thing of MQLs can be great, but they can also be very dangerous. And if you're kind of doing things just to hit your MQLs, but they're not actually proving to be fulfilling your pipeline at the end of the day, you might need to be rethinking that a little bit. So, Brendan, over to you. What do you think is getting glazed over when it comes to demand generation?
I think a couple different things, but I'll add first here, similar to what Joyce was talking about. I remember, I think it was Chili Piper and Nevada did a really cool thing where they signed up for demos for 100 different companies. And something like 2/3 took longer than a day to respond, and a third never responded. Like they signed up for a demo, they never got any sort of contact. And we could blame that on like, oh, it's marketing, it's a systems problem. But when 33 of these pretty big companies never respond, you can kind of tell like it's an issue internally in a lot of companies. Is exactly what Joyce was describing. Where like there's no trust, and then like why would I follow up with these garbage leads from marketing? Like we don't want these, right? And that's where you see it play out, and it becomes a bigger company-wide issue. So I think like we have a chance to do something impactful across the organization. So I definitely agree. I think in terms of what I see getting glazed over, Lindsay, have you ever heard of a conceptual scoop?
A conceptual scoop? No, but tell me more.
Okay. So my friend, Kurt, I think he's the director of content is his title, Kurt Woodward, who works at ZoomInfo. He brought like this to my attention. We've all heard of examples of conceptual scoops, which are things like the Great Resignation, quiet quitting, that sort. Like, we all heard about those, especially in the professional world that we all operate in. But really what that was journalists, instead of having a scoop of like, I have an insider here, an insider there, I'm going to like find the story and do some like investigative journalism. They were like, I noticed this overall trend happening. We can all feel it. We all see it. I'm just going to put words to it. And let's be honest, like the Great Resignation and quiet quitting is like A+ language. Like, it was perfect. I love it. And as it should be, journalists are amazing. Some of the best marketers are former journalists. However, this conceptual scoop is something that not enough marketers do. We miss this. We all want to like name our category. We've all seen this. Like everybody got really excited. We were like, we're all creating categories now. We're all category leaders, and we're going to like get really excited because Apple is a category leader, or Amazon, and like, yeah, but like there can be only one. And if we cherry pick these examples and say we could all do that, like that's probably silly, right? So instead of spending time like Active Campaign, and I'm not dogging on them, but they tried to become marketing or customer experience automation. What? Like, who wants that? Most people didn't even know that they did email marketing or had enterprise grade marketing automations for like $9 a month. We should have focused there, but instead we tried to create a category nobody was asking for, right? When you're creating a category, the goal is like, you're just doing what a conceptual scoop is, which is we see this wave happening. We saw this with like customer success becoming its own function, right? People noticed it was happening. I think it was Gainsight like pushed for this to become a category and did all this work, but they've always talked about like, we saw this happening, and then our company existed to help people ride this existing wave. So I think instead of putting all of our time and energy and, glazing over, so to speak, and missing the point, instead, let's put our time and energy into naming problems our customers have. Everybody here, if you talk to your customers, which, you should, because I already said it once, the next piece of that is figuring out the problems and pain points they have, and then giving them words for it. All of our customers could give you a sentence or a paragraph. Like, yeah, we know. We all have those like persona decks where they're, it's like, Mary marketer has these 5 pain points, and then like Steve, the salesperson, has these 5 or whatever. Instead of doing sentences, like get a little like hand wavy, like marketing drum circle-y, and give them phrases for those types of things. You heard me say checkbox marketing earlier. That's an example of something that I help my clients solve within their companies. It's like, let's stop this and let's move over to a modern content marketing engine. I call this content IP. Like, just create your own intellect, and people steal it from you. The goal is for it to become ubiquitous, right? Like, the goal is that everybody now uses this phrase for the problem. But when you give people those words for the problems they have, trust goes way up. The solution becomes a little bit more relevant. And if you're selling something that we all know that like a lot of our products are not as differentiated as we'd like to make them seem all the time, maybe. Am I allowed to say that out loud? Sometimes like that really, really does matter. They know my problems better than anybody else. They created the words for these problems. I trust them. And when I'm ready to buy, they're absolutely number one on the list.
And I think if you want to dig into that and figure out how to find those phrases and discover those really resonating pieces, if anyone was on the series masterclass, Jay was on, our episode 2 talking about resonance and why that is so important. I think if you have, call tracking software like Gong, or if you're using AI tools, you can pull in a lot of those customer conversations, a lot of those sales conversations, hear what your prospects and customers are actually using in their day-to-day language. Like, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to go so far in left field to be like super creative or super punchy, or, I have the most kick-ass language for this. Like, no, like, figure out what are those actual terms and phrases, figure out for the truth of what they are, and integrate that back into kind of like those decks and those ICPs and things like that. And I want to say, like, the conceptual scoop is super interesting. And I want to ask you, like, is this one you think that works in that? We've heard about rise of AI and how AI is a big topic and a buzzword. And one thing I've seen that's really stood out to me and resonates with me is, AI is not going to steal your job, but a marketer who can use AI will. So that might be one maybe that falls into that category too. So,
Yeah, I think like looking at the you mentioned Jay. Jay said something recently. I don't even think he's thought about coining this, but he talked about how most of our marketing materials gather digital dust. And I was just like, oh, as soon as I like highlighted it and screenshotted it on my phone, like things like that, where you're like, this is the problem that we exist to solve. So yeah, absolutely. Like if your company exists to help people, and I think a lot of the generative AI companies like Copy AI, Jasper, that market a lot to marketers would be bereft of like giving words to this fear of like, is AI going to come for my job? Our company is going to adopt it. I think we'd all like to pretend like, you know, we're irreplaceable, but if you're doing checkbox marketing, you're doing this commodity content, like unfortunately you are completely replaceable. So starting to like move into those other areas, you know, I'm of the hope and optimism that it makes us all better. But yeah, I think they would be really smart to start putting words to that fear because it's very real.
Oh yeah, well, all feeling it at some point or moment in time. So, well, this leads us into our next segment. So this one is donut delivery. Can't wait to do that to my donuts over here once this episode is done. So inspiring video. Thank you, design team, for that one. So
I took a bite of mine a minute ago and it was a terrible decision.
I actually have had someone ask me if like we eat the donuts on the show, and I was like, I don't think that would go over well. I mean, I don't know. Maybe some people's
I
things.
just went for it. It's fine.
Not my thing. But anyways, donut delivery is all about how you boost conversion. So this can range on a whole different plethora of channels. So whether it's event registrations, content downloads, email signups, whatever works. So Brendan, Joyce, either of you want to start out with this conversion boosting topic?
Okay, I'll take it. So I think for, you know, boosting conversions, testing, experimentation, right? I think regardless of what company you're at and the company size, I think that's something that like all demand marketers, we should have at our core and should always remember that, like, you know, there's you take something, you test on it, you experiment. If it works, you optimize it, and you just continue to iterate, sort of, you know, with that process. I think there are a lot of things, you know, Lindsay, you mentioned it can come in multiple different forms of channels, tactics, but I think ultimately, you know, you pick one thing, you do A/B testing. It could be subject lines if you're looking at emails, if you're looking at, you know, trying to boost conversions on a landing page that's driving to more downloads, like change up the copy, change up the format of it. We did something here really early on when we were trying to build out a webinar series, and we were trying to figure out, you know, why the drop in conversions from our landing page to webinar signups. And of course, it was during the time of COVID. And so there's a lot going on, like webinar fatigue. Then once people came out of COVID, everybody was pretty much done with webinars. And so the conversion, you know, drop wasn't a huge surprise to us, but obviously we need to figure out how we fix this. So we actually tested from both a marketing and sales side of how we can get, you know, more engaging conversations, but also just engage audiences. And so we put a short video, just a snippet of, you know, what we were going to promote during our webinar. And we would mix, you know, having a marketer come on and speak about it. Depending on the topic, we would have one of our executives come on and speak about it. And it was a very, you know, short 30-second overview highlight. And, you know, it worked really well to help us boost conversions. We kept it very informal, casual. I think one of the marketers even tested, like during the wintertime, they were up in Tahoe, so they dressed up in snow gear, and it was all about like, you know, how do you increase or, you know, change the strategy and pivot on strategy when you're sort of in this like freeze. So I think all that being said, you know, there's a lot of different ways that you can boost conversions. And I think many times, you know, demand marketing becomes this repetitive, like mundane motion. But I think if we just remember, you know, testing, experimentation, you can do it on all fronts. And there are many different ways to do it. And it's sort of the best way to just hack. I call it like a mini hackathon, and to get those creative juices going, but also, you know, do something impactful for the business in the long run.
Marketers love a good hack. I mean, audience members, you all like a good hack? Because I sure do. Joyce, I will ask, any tools you recommend using for any of the testing you are doing? I know that's a common question for marketers of, well, if I do want to test, what tools can I use to be able to test and see like the results of what I'm doing to finagle these kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, a no-brainer is we use Optimizely a lot when we're looking at landing pages. So we'll do our testing through there. We also do some experimentation just off through Eloqua because that's what we have from an email perspective. So a lot of A/B tests there as well. But I think we're a perfect example of, you don't necessarily need a ton of tools to be able to do that. I think a lot of the times that's also a huge frustration point, which is like, oh, I don't have the tools to be able to do this. And I think it's a lot of the things that we already have and are using today. And there are just ways that we can tweak it to refine and implement some of these tests.
Yes, that's a good reminder. If you have any calls with your CSMs of any tech you're having, ask them, hey, are there abilities within your tool for me to be able to A/B test, whatever channel or distribution? I will say when we did our homepage revamp for Goldcast, Google Analytics actually did have a A/B testing tool, and then they sunsetted it like right after we discovered it and used it. It was painful and great and sad, but maybe they'll bring it back. Maybe someone from Google will listen to this and be like, you know what? Why'd we kill that? But
yeah, we did use that one too. So.
Yeah, it's painful. Anyone who used it, it was like great and it worked well and it was easy, and now it's goodbye. But Google's going through all sorts of weird changes right now. I think we can all agree. So, Brendan, we're going to bring it over to you then. What is your take on how you can boost conversions?
So I think it goes back to everything I've kind of already talked about, right? Like you've talked to customers, you talk to the people that are talking to customers, you've created content IP. Like we want to give that, like we have to start there. But I think beyond that, and this I'm going to oversimplify and then give some examples. Like oversimplification is like give them things that help them, not the things you want to tell them. Don't market like at them, market with them, so to speak. Literally right before this, I was on I follow this guy named Scott Galloway on Threads, and he was like, oh, I'm doing this 2024 predictions. I'm obsessed with that sort of stuff. Megan Anderson from Jasper did one with Amrita and Superside, and they were like, here's how our year went so far. Here's what we think is going to happen the second half of the year. And I'm like, oh, I love this, like behind the scenes, like really, what do you think is going to happen? I want to hear smart people I respect tell me what they think the future is going to be like. It's an amazing premise. Scott, so I go to log in and it's like, hey, we only have 5,000 people able to be in our Zoom. If you want to go to the overflow area on YouTube Live, you can watch it there. For an hour-long talk, there were 5,000 people in Zoom and 2,000 watching on YouTube. 7,000 people for like a live event that I saw on social media. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. The premise matters more than anything. Like, yes, it was this person or that thing, but I think the premise of like what something is increases the conversion more than anything. Whether it's a white paper or an event or I don't care, anything that you're asking somebody to give their email or pay for, the premise matters more than anything. 𝐀𝐸 talks about this premise methodology of like, unlike X, only we Y, right? Like, unlike everybody else that talks about this thing, only we do this one thing. We do it differently. It's why it's changed how I do my newsletter. So I used to do a lot of just like, hey, I do it with Lindsay Adams, who Lindsay, is a former colleague. But we just did like links. It was like links in our take. And people would be like, I love this. And I'd be like, do you though? I don't love it. Like sometimes like, that's a thing with a lot of marketers. If you want to retain talent, they have to, Joyce talked about this earlier, like they have to know their impact they're having. And they also have to like the materials they're making to some degree. Like you have to be proud of the marketing materials you're putting out into the world. So I changed my newsletter to be like, all right, I'm tired of all these like fake marketing teardowns, right? Like, yeah, you went into SEMrush, pulled some numbers, and now you think you know how Canva was built. Like you don't. So I just started interviewing marketing leaders and I'm like, what's your hiring strategy? What does the team look like? How do you set goals? How do you run meetings? That's really how we get customers. Like we think because we can see the marketing, we know, Well, it's their LinkedIn strategy. You don't know. Like, you don't know how did they figure out all those posts? Who's actually writing the posts for their CEO? Is their CEO spending 3 hours a day thinking about writing a LinkedIn post? I don't know. So I just started interviewing marketing leaders and giving people that. That is the thing that VPs and CMOs and directors need, is like that stuff, because that's how you get customers. Joyce, I'm 100% asking you to do this, to be a part of it. Like, that was my pick.
Sign me on. All right.
But that's the thing that actually helps people. That is a thing worth gating, worth asking them to opt in for. It is a premise that nobody else does. And because it's unique and because it's uniquely valuable, conversions are much higher than if I was like, sign up for my email newsletter where I'll tell you how to put keywords in your header tags. Yeah. Like, it's not a very exciting. Or, like, want to become a lead? Like, I'm going to, like, now you're a lead because you've opted in. Like, anybody want to become an MQL? Like, no, nobody wants that. But that's most of what a lot of marketing is.
Why are marketers so broken?
We're not broken. It's just a machine that we've all had to be in because of like quick funding rounds and like venture capital and stuff. We had to overinvest in short-term tactics. We haven't been able to play the long game, right? Like, when your burn rate is so high that you have to raise a Series C by year 2.5, like, you have to go fast and you have to just throw a tremendous amount of, volume at every channel. And now that we're kind of seeing that correct a little bit, which sucks, because 1,000 companies have laid off 250,000 people in tech, that objectively is awful and has impacted a lot of people's lives. However, if I had to find hope in it, it would be that like we get to do marketing that we're proud of, that is more impactful and maybe a little bit less only short term.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to add to that really quickly too. I think, Brendan, it kind of brings us back. I think a lot of us go into marketing because those are the things that we want to do. Like, we want to be able to get creative, think about, what's the differentiation that's really going to make people gravitate towards you and create the really compelling pieces. But because we do get caught up, I think, very much in, the everyday, and to your point, tech, funding, all of that, you end up doing the same thing over and over again, and it really limits our creativity. So I think in some ways it's like, now is the time for a lot of us as marketers, and also, for organizations, to think about, how do you hone in on the value and deliver on that value to make it unique? Because you are sifting through the noise, but also this is our opportunity now to, in some ways, spread our wings again and come back to why it is we all decided to become marketers in the first place. So I will just add that I support everything you said.
That was a beautiful moment, you all. See, this is why I host the show, to have like moments and conversations like this, because I am one of those marketers who has been laid off because of all the things you just talked about. And I'm not going to start down that path, because I will never quit if I do. But I love that you both have this optimistic take of, as shitty of an environment as we are sitting in right now, if you're working in specifically software, but even just like the economy as a whole is not great right now, I think you have unearthed that there could be some beauty hidden behind all the ugliness. And that makes me really hopeful as a marketer. So just thank you. Don't want to get too cheesy on that. But we are about to hop into our last segment before we go to Q&A. So if you do have any questions you want to ask of either of our speakers, please hop over that Q&A, ask it there. And then also take a look at what's already there, upvote what you want to ask so we know where to start, because we'll only have a finite amount of time to answer all those questions. So we're going to go into our final section before Q&A, which is donut dedications. There we go. I feel like that's a really joyful transition too, kind of like the end of where you all went with that message. So nice little bouncy, airy donuts. So I don't know who wants to start on this, but Donut Dedications is all about shouting out B2B marketers and brands who are really killing it when it comes to marketing, and inspiring you and giving our audience just kind of some inspiration of other people to go out and follow and learn from. So Brendan, Joyce, who do you want to give a donut dedication to today?
I'll go, so I don't have to follow Brendan. I'll probably be in his shadows. No,
absolutely not.
I think my shout out, they're probably not as prevalent on, social and within the industry, but it's a good friend of mine, Karthik Chandramouli. I know he's also a huge fan and partner of Goldcast as well, but I think he's a excellent demand marketer. He's been, multiple different companies, Google, we worked together at Box, he's now at Uber. And so just amazing, very well-rounded. And, when I think about demand marketing, revenue marketing, account-based marketing, like he's the man. So that's my shout out. He doesn't know I'm giving him a shout out, but I highly respect him as a peer, as a friend, but also just somebody who is very well versed within the industry, I think. In terms of a brand, so I think Brendan mentioned them earlier, but Canva. I've actually been really impressed by Canva and how quickly they have grown as a company and how they've actually become profitable in such a short amount of time. I think, they're doing some really cool things when you think about like the in-product experience and how to actually generate demand via your product. The way that they allow, prospects, customers to really experience the product and then do a lot of the trying and exploring within their own product, I think is very cool and is actually something that seems very simple, but can be difficult for a lot of companies to do. I also recently saw like a marketing campaign that they were doing where they partner with Apple. So you can create a Canva design and then, they do kind of a selection and a contest of whoever creates the best design and it gets featured on Apple, the Apple Store. So I thought that was great, and seeing a little bit more of that. And a lot of these brands now leverage a lot more partner marketing as well to elevate some of their campaigns is great. So I love Canva and I'm going to continue to follow them and see, what more they bring.
Yes, Canva is a good one. And they are founded, and I'm pretty sure their CEO is still the woman who founded Canva.
Yes.
I think, is that correct?
Yes.
So holla
Yes.
to the female founders. We don't have enough of them. We need more of them. So love that you picked a brand that also has a female founder and female CEO, because definitely need more of those out there. So those are great ones, Joyce. Super appreciate you sharing. So Brendan, who are you giving some donut dedications out to today?
I would first say, we already talked about her, but Lindsay Adams, who works with me on my newsletter growing up, but also in the community for SaaS marketers that I started called All In. But if I could add a second one, it would be my friend Devin Bramhall. She was the former director of content at, I think, Help Scout, and then became the CEO at Animals, a content marketing agency. She's currently battling a very rare form of cancer. She's an amazing marketer who has touched the lives of a lot of people, not just in like her work and how she thinks about things. She also has a podcast with Margaret Kelsey that's really good called Don't Say Content. But she's amazing across the board. Because she's struggling with that, I'll put a link here in the chat. A bunch of my friends, 𝐀𝐿, who we've talked about a bunch too, Ann Hanley, John Bonini, a ton of other people are doing a little event just to raise money for her. It's only $15 to join the event, and we've already raised like 10 grand, which is really, really cool. So if you want to join us there, we'd love to have more people, but I would definitely shout her out. Like she has had, she's one of those people you meet and immediately are like, oh my God, I love this person. They're like the bright light in the room. But I didn't realize that like everybody has had that experience with her. Like everybody immediately loves her. Cause as soon as like we like said we were going to do this, all of those replies came in. So I would definitely shout her out. In terms of a brand, there is a small company, only 2 marketers that I love called Novatic. And I think they get marketing better than a lot of other places. They do a lot with advisors and evangelists that I think is super smart. So instead of just throwing yeeting $1 billion into the sun through Google ads, instead they're investing in that. Another one would be SparkToro. I think despite having in some circles, very famous founder of Rand Fishkin and Amanda Natividad, who is also very popular in her own right and amazing. In addition to that, they, you would think they would do like the SEO play and stuff like that. They actually end up just doing a lot of what they call like trend jacking, which I think is pretty incredible. They were like when Elon Musk was talking about buying Twitter, he, in his typical insane way was like, I think most of the users are fake. And Rand was immediately like, we can get that data. We have that data. And he quickly like partnered with a few people, put something together, had a report out in a couple of days. And I think that report was covered in like over 1,000 media outlets and still gets cited all the time. Like they just do a lot of that sort of stuff of like, what is actually interesting to our audience? How do we get some data that nobody else has? I find that really inspiring. That's this type of thing that really cuts through the noise.
And I think you make a point too of why marketers need to be flexible and need to leave space for things like that, because
right?
Tacking on to those things is so crucial, so important. You can capture so much through that strategy. And I will say it's very hard. I don't know if anyone's a type A kind of planner type like me, but it's hard for me to like leave space for things like that. But when those moments happen where you can do that trend jacking and do it well, because there's a way to do it very terribly and very not well. But I think you make a great point with that. Something we should all keep in mind. No, we're running up against time, but we do have one question I want to cover. So I'm actually going to pull this on stage. So if anyone is a Common Donuts and Demand visitor, you can actually ask questions before you attend the event. So that's super helpful. So if you're planning to see us in January and want to ask questions of our guests, please do submit those to me beforehand. Going to be a great event. We have Pure Storage and Speckit on our January 16th event. But our question comes from Slajana today of ADP. So she says, my job has increasingly been requesting us to implement Gen AI strategies into our overall marketing strategy, including event, content, etc. How have you implemented, or how are you getting ready to implement a Gen AI strategy into your marketing initiatives, and how are you tracking results? So Brendan, Joyce, who wants to take this one first? It's a doozy of a question.
Brendan, you want to go?
Yeah, I got it. So I think like there's obvious use cases right around content and things like that. Some of them are very underwhelming, like the idea that I could spin up a bunch of vapid blogs and everything and add 7,000 pages to my website in 3 days. Like, cool, but it's not going to turn into revenue. Nobody that reads those is going to be like, I would like to spend money with this company. And that's not new. Like, you used to be able to buy it from content farms for like 3 cents a word, right? All the affiliate blogs did that in SEO. Where things are really interesting for me are the less ROI customer acquisition focused stuff. Copy AI has a really cool like workflows product where they basically take the transcript out of Gong and run it through their workflows product, which analyzes it for like 7 or 8 different things. I made a post about this on LinkedIn. I think it's fascinating. And then that kicks into Slack. So for every single sales call they have a Slack thread, and the marketing team and the sales team are just like in lockstep. Because instead of like, oh, listen to Gong calls, and you're like, I don't know if I can commit an hour to this over and over. Instead, I get like an actual breakdown of like, here's what they cared about. Here's what they said didn't matter. Here's why. Like all of this interesting stuff in these insights. And I could cruise it in Slack in 30 minutes, catch up on every sales call that happened that day. That's where things get interesting. The ROI of that is infinite. And that stuff for me is really, really exciting. The other one that's really exciting for me, and shameless plug, I don't know, like Content Lab from Goldcast, I think is really cool, right? Normally we would have an event like this, and then Lindsay would have to like go rewatch it. She's already lived it once, and then she has to rewatch it, or worse, she's like not paying attention now because she's trying to like take notes because she knows she has to send out a recap email and write up a blog post and edit all of this stuff, and it loses its luster, right? 2 weeks from now, like it's not like, hey, here's the recap you wanted, like I wanted it then. And now with Content Lab, like we can get all of that stuff for events that is really, really valuable. I'm sure like Joyce and I said a bunch of interesting stuff today that you're like, oh, neat. Now that can happen super, like not instantly, but like we're talking 24 hours or a couple days to get everything out versus before what would take somebody weeks. So those types of things I think are really exciting for me.
Yeah. I will say from our side, so this is a hot topic for us here too at DocuSign, and we've thought about it and how we might want to start experimenting or testing some AI strategy. I think from a content perspective, of course, people have been dabbling in like Chat GPT, and some of the marketers here are just like, let's ask, what's the best way for us to devise a strategy just by, plugging something in there. But I think the place that we've sort of decided right now where we want to test that out is primarily in terms of how we can leverage AI to help with conversions. So we are using and we're evaluating right now 𝐀𝐻𝐭. So in essence, the problem that we have is we're obviously a really large engine, massive organization, and we've been very fortunate to have a lot of influx and inbound requests for people wanting to use DocuSign. But knowing now that as we kind of get to the next phase, we need to be a little bit more specific and also support our sales teams in managing some of those like deep, true, rich conversations that they should be having and helping them funnel through the noise. But of course, the noise is still very important to our business as well. And we want to make sure that we've got a way to convert those with, low cost to us. So 𝐀𝐻𝐭 is one that we're exploring right now to see whether or not, we can leverage some AI and have them help us understand, train them up on what is our ICP, our audiences, so that they can go and sort of field the masses of potential prospects or customers that we have. And that way we can focus our sales development reps on, channels that we know are highly converting or open us up for greater conversations for expansion. So that's one for us. And on the content side, I think it's still TBD. I think we are trying to balance between how much AI do you use versus where do we actually implement and execute AI to make it impactful for the business and not, erode the trust that we have with our customers today.
Not erode the trust. Yes, that's a perfect way to put a bow on that one. And I like that you're thinking of AI in innovative ways. I'll put one plug for content around from Goldcast around AI, and that is that link I put in there for our AI Summit. Session 2 actually correlates directly with this question she just asked. So if anyone's interested, it's titled How to Use AI in Your Marketing Workflows. We had Jessica from VMware and we had Anne-Marie from Salesforce, and they had a great presentation all around AI and its use in marketing. But Brendan, Joyce, unfortunately, we're at the end. It just flew by. Thank you so much for taking time to explore demand generation with us today. You shared so many things, and like Brendan said, can't wait to get in Content Lab and snip them all up and pull them all out and share them with everybody. Thank you again. One final call out. If you want to help us with that demand generation compensation survey, hit that cute little take survey button at the top, and then you'll get an email from me with all the details on that. So we'd love to share that information with you and share it more broadly. So Brendan, Joyce, thank you so much. We appreciate your time, and everyone have happy holidays. Hopefully see you at Frosty Fest on Friday to win some killer prizes. So bye, everybody.